They were icons, names that once shone brightly and were admired by the world. But behind that glamour lay a silent battle against HIV/AIDS, an invisible enemy, in a time filled with fear and prejudice. Instead of remaining silent, they chose to confront it. They dared to speak the truth, dared to live authentically, and used their personal stories to open up new awareness in society. These were not just tragic losses, but also journeys of courage and resilience. They transformed pain into strength, discrimination into a voice of awakening, and left behind stories of overcoming adversity that were profoundly humane. Even as time passes, what they did continues to resonate. It's not just a memory of a difficult period, but a reminder that the truth, when spoken with courage, can change how the world perceives and understands humanity. Cookie Mueller, fierce, free-spirited, and almost impossible to look away from. She's not just an actress, writer, or an underground artist, but a burst of life energy, always appearing as if to break all boundaries. From the eccentric films of John Waters to the gritty art scene of New York, Cookie doesn't just participate, she transforms every place she appears into her own unique mark. But in the late 1980s, when the AIDS epidemic spread and silently infiltrated creative communities, Cookie was not spared. Despite facing the disease, she maintained her inherent spirit, strong, straightforward, and uncompromising. Even as her health declined, she continued to write, continued to speak out, leaving behind sharp, poignant, and vibrant writings. On November 10, 1989, Cookie Mueller passed away at the age of 40. Her death not only brought to an end a remarkable artistic life, but also left a void left by a free, bold voice that never remained silent in the face of life's challenges. Peter Allen, an artist who sang as if recounting his own life, with both his voice and his heart. With his dazzling costumes and energetic performances, he transformed the stage into a world of his own, where emotion and light intertwined. Hailing from Australia, Peter not only brought music but also became an image of freedom and courage, living true to himself in an era still marked by prejudice. In 1984, he was diagnosed with HIV, but instead of retreating, Peter Allen continued to live and perform with all his passion. He stepped onto the stage as if nothing had changed, his smile still radiant, his energy still explosive, as if music could keep him standing against the encroaching darkness. However, over time, his illness made even the stage lights more fragile. On June 18, 1992, Peter Allen passed away at the age of 48 from complications related to AIDS. His passing leaves behind a great sense of loss, but also leaves a lasting impression of an artist who chose to live life to the fullest, without concealment or retreat. His legacy lies not only in his songs, but also in his spirit of daring to live authentically and shine brightly amidst the limitations of his time. Lara Rox, once a quiet girl, has now become a voice for herself. When she entered the adult film industry in 2004, she carried with her hopeful eyes, youthful innocence, and belief in a new path. But after her first filming session, everything took an unexpected turn. There was no adequate protection, no clear warning, and no preparation for the consequences. 2 weeks later, a positive HIV test came as a shock at the age of 21. The shock spread not only through Lara's life, but also through the industry, which usually avoids such stories. She was devastated, but she didn't disappear. Instead of being swallowed by silence, Lara began to stand up, gradually confronting the truth and bringing it to light, though it was not easy. Her story quickly attracted attention and forced many to re-examine the rarely discussed dark sides of this profession. From a vulnerable individual, Lara became an advocate for workplace safety, health education, and the rights of those in the industry to protection. She shared her journey through interviews and documentary projects, openly and honestly recounting her experiences. Over time, her voice grew clearer, no longer just her own story. Today, Lara continues to speak out. From someone who was once hurt, she has become a symbol of resilience, a voice that cannot be ignored, and one that is no longer silenced. Ian Charleston, an actor who left a profound mark not only on stage and screen, but also in the memories of true art lovers. He shone brightly in Chariots of Fire, a role that brought his name to global audiences. A role full of power, subtlety, and unforgettable. A rare talent possessing the spirit of Shakespeare, with a quiet yet burning inner self. In 1986, at the height of his career, Ian received a cruel real-life script. He was diagnosed with HIV. Without fanfare or ostentation, he chose silence and continued his work. He remained on stage, embodying his characters, dedicating himself completely, as if every moment held special meaning as time became limited. In his role as Hamlet, his final role, the dialogues about death and existence took on a different meaning. Like a gentle farewell he left for his audience. At the time, no one knew they were witnessing the final appearances of an artist whose life was drawing to a close. Ian Charleston died on January 6, 1990, at the age of 40. Later, according to his will, the truth was revealed. He died from complications related to AIDS. This wasn't a statement for attention, but a choice of honesty and dignity. Ian was not only a talented actor, but also a quiet yet steadfast voice amidst a time of much prejudice. And so he remains in art, in memory, and in roles that will never fade. Gia Karangi, a beauty that exploded too early, too intensely to last, before the world knew of social media or the concept of supermodel becoming the norm. Gia emerged as an irreplaceable phenomenon. She was not only a prominent face in the fashion world, but also an icon of wildness, allure, and haunting beauty, a beauty both radiant and fragile. Gia entered the fashion world like a breath of fresh air, strong, bold, and full of life. But it was also that world, with its glamorous spotlight and invisible pressures, that gradually pushed her into dark corners from which she could not escape. Behind the dazzling photo shoots and brilliant runways lay a silent battle with addiction, loneliness, and a feeling of abandonment in the very place that once celebrated her. In 1986, Gia became one of the first women recorded as having HIV related to injectable drug use. It wasn't just a medical diagnosis, but a cruel turning point in a life already riddled with cracks, amidst a time of limited understanding and deeply ingrained prejudice. She died on November 18, 1986, at the young age of 26. A life ended too soon in the quiet solitude of a hospital, without the flashing lights or admiring gazes. But Gia's story didn't disappear with her. On the contrary, it remains as a part of the memory of the fashion industry and popular culture, not just a reminder of beauty, but also of the fragility behind the glamour. Gia Karangi became a reminder of the price of fame, of the dark sides few want to confront, and of a person who once lived so brilliantly that she could never be forgotten. Philly Ludaya, a singer who chose not to remain silent. As one of Uganda's most prominent stars, Philly Bongoli Ludaya's voice resonated throughout ceremonies, stages, and community events, spreading joy, connection, and optimism across Africa. His music was not just for listening, but for feeling a powerful zest for life. However, in 1987, he shocked the continent by publicly revealing that he was living with HIV. In a context where the disease was still shrouded in fear, prejudice, and avoidance, his decision was something few dared to make. Instead of retreating, Philly chose to confront it. He continued to appear, continued to share, and released a deeply personal album containing real experiences, losses, and a fragile but unwavering belief in the future. His music gradually became a way to speak out about what many dared not mention. Not stopping there, he traveled far and wide to speak about the disease, confronting stigma and urging the community to acknowledge reality instead of turning away. Some disagreed. Some listened, but his message continued to spread, slowly but persistently. Philly Ludaya passed away on December 15, 1989, at the young age of 38. Though his life ended prematurely, his voice and story remain as a reminder of courage, of facing the truth, and of the power of music when used to change perceptions. Karen Dior, a bold, captivating woman who defies conventional norms. She's not just a face in the adult entertainment industry, but also a director, creator, and a voice for personal freedom. As a transgender woman, Karen chose to define herself in a world fraught with barriers and prejudice. In 1990, at the height of her career, she was diagnosed with HIV. But instead of withdrawing from public view, Karen continued to move forward. She worked behind the camera, engaging in creative endeavors and contributing to opening up space for the LGBTQ community in an environment that wasn't easily accepting of differences. For her, art was not just work, but a way to affirm her existence. Karen Dior didn't choose silence in the face of her circumstances. She continued to work, continued to express herself, and persevered in living true to herself, even when facing numerous challenges. She contributed to changing perceptions of gender, art, and the right to exist fully. In 2004, at the age of 37, Karen died from complications related to AIDS. Her passing was quiet, but her legacy continues to be meaningful to many. Karen Dior is remembered as an icon of resilience and freedom, a woman who lived true to herself until her final moments. Billy Porter, a man who always steps into the spotlight with boldness and refuses to accept silence. He doesn't just appear on the red carpet. He transforms it into a true stage where fashion, personality, and art intertwine. Radiant, powerful, and unmistakable, Billy has long been an icon of self-expression. However, behind that confident image lies a secret kept for many years. In 2007, when his career was struggling and he was facing challenging times in his life, Billy was diagnosed with HIV. For a long time, he chose to remain silent, hiding it for fear of stigma, judgment, and the closure of his career. But that silence became a burden. And then, in 2021, Billy Porter decided to speak the truth in an emotional public sharing. He admitted that he had been living with HIV for over a decade. That moment was not just a personal release, but a powerful statement about confronting oneself and breaking down prejudices. From that point on, Billy became known not only as a Broadway and film star, but also as a pioneer in raising awareness and representing his community. His story became proof that the truth, no matter how long hidden, can become a powerful force when spoken aloud. Isaac Asimov, considered a prophet of the future, opened up worlds of robots, galactic empires, and visions far beyond the imagination of his time. He was not only a writer, but also a colossal intellect, always seeking to explain the universe through reason and words. But even such a great man was not immune to very human events. In 1983, during heart surgery, a medical complication occurred, leading to him inadvertently contracting HIV from a blood transfusion. In the context of societal misunderstanding and stigma at the time, this information was kept secret. Asimov did not speak out publicly, partly because the medical and societal situation was not yet ready, and partly because of his and his family's privacy. Instead of stopping, he continued working. Isaac Asimov continued to write, research, and complete unfinished projects, as if each page was his way of maintaining his presence in a world that was changing every day. His later works, from scientific essays to memoirs, bear the mark of a man who understood the limitations of time but never ceased to create. He died on April 6, 1992, from complications related to his illness. Only many years later was the truth about his condition revealed. At the request of his family, when this came to light, it was not only moving, but also prompted a deeper reflection on the fragility of human beings, no matter how great their intellect. Isaac Asimov left behind hundreds of works and a vast intellectual legacy. But what endures even longer is the image of a person who used knowledge to defy the limitations of time, leaving behind the belief that ideas can outlast their creators. Mike Bittler was a driver with an unusual quietness. Not flashy or ostentatious, yet always leaving his mark on the track. He was seen as a silent symbol of rebellion in the world of Formula One, and one of the very few drivers who dared to live true to himself in an environment full of rigid stereotypes and prejudices. Throughout his racing career, Mike didn't need pronouncements or external glamour to prove himself. He let his car speak for him, controlling it with focus and determination, as if each lap carried a meaning far beyond victory or defeat. In the 1970s, when rigid image and masculine standards still dominated elite sports, being true to oneself was almost unspoken. Mike chose to exist on the delicate line between silence and truth, where teammates could sense it to some extent. Friends could only understand implicitly, and the media almost completely avoided him. After retiring from racing, he returned to Los Angeles, seeking a more peaceful life, away from the roar of engines and the harsh glare of the racing scene. But that peace didn't last. In 1988, Mike died at the age of 48 from complications related to AIDS, bringing to a close a life filled with suppressed emotions and secrets. Mike Bittler didn't leave behind any groundbreaking statements or sensational stories. But it was his silence and the way he survived in an era of prejudice that made his name a special mark. A man who lived true to himself, even when the world around him wasn't ready to accept it. Tina Chow is a fashion icon who has made the world pause and reconsider the concept of beauty and sophistication. She is not only a model and muse for renowned designers, but also a unique artistic personality within the international elite. With her elegant demeanor and minimalist, yet profound aesthetic sense, Tina has become an inspiration for many fashion houses and is considered a model of understated elegance. However, behind that glamour lies a challenging journey that few know about. In the early 1990s, Tina publicly revealed that she was living with HIV. At a time when the disease was still misunderstood and associated with strong prejudices, the news of her infection, believed to stem from a past personal relationship, shocked the public and exposed the dark side of how society viewed the disease and those afflicted. Tina didn't choose to draw attention through forceful statements or heated debates. She expressed her voice through composure, dignity, and a self-respecting way of life. Though quiet, her influence was powerful, contributing to a shift in perception within the fashion industry and the community, where image and reputation are often paramount. On January 24, 1992, Tina Chow passed away at the age of 41, leaving a significant void in the world of art and fashion. However, her legacy doesn't end with her passing. Tina's beauty, aesthetic sensibility, and resilient spirit continue to inspire generations, proving that a person's worth lies not only in outward glamour, but also in how they face life's challenges. Elizabeth Glaser was a mother, a wife, a woman who never sought fame yet became a symbol of courage. Her story didn't begin on a glamorous stage, but in a hospital room where a blood transfusion during childbirth inadvertently opened a tragic turning point. From that moment, HIV entered her life, silently but cruelly. In that painful accident, she transmitted the virus to her firstborn daughter and then to her son. The greatest pain came when her daughter died at the age of 7. But instead of collapsing completely, Elizabeth rose from the shattered pieces of her loss. That once broken heart gradually became a source of strength to act. In a time when HIV/AIDS was still shrouded in fear, especially when it involved children, she chose not to remain silent. She spoke out, fought, and founded the Elizabeth Glaser Pediatric AIDS Foundation, transforming her personal tragedy into a broader humanitarian mission, urging the world to confront reality and take action. With unwavering resolve and sincerity, she appeared before Congress, her eyes filled with tears but her voice resolute, urging change not just for her family, but for millions of children in need. On December 3, 1994, Elizabeth died at the age of 47, but her journey did not end there. Her legacy lives on, as the foundation bearing her name has raised billions of dollars for research and treatment, bringing hope to countless children around the world. Elizabeth Glaser did not just face her own tragedy, she transformed it into a movement that changed the world. Amanda Blake, one of America's most beloved faces, the woman with the fiery red hair and confident gaze as Kitty Russell in Gunsmoke. For nearly 2 decades, she was associated with the series, becoming an icon of strength, grace, and self-confidence in a world of masculine cowboys. But behind that radiant image lay a private journey filled with hidden complexities that few could see. In the late 1980s, rumors began to spread about HIV/AIDS. For many fans, it was almost unbelievable because Kitty Russell's image was still so familiar, so vivid on the small screen. Initially, Amanda chose to remain silent, as a natural reaction to the fear and prejudice that still weighed heavily on society at the time. But the truth, though avoided, gradually came to light. In 1989, she made the courageous decision to publicly disclose her condition. That moment brought a disease shrouded in alienation closer, and gave it a very human face, the face of an actress loved by millions of families. Not content with simply acknowledging it, Amanda continued to use her voice to create change. She participated in HIV/AIDS awareness campaigns, contributed to community messages, spoke frankly about safe sex, and broke the silence that had once enveloped the disease. Through her fame, she helped break down the invisible barriers of stigma and fear. On August 16, 1989, Amanda Blake passed away at the age of 60. Her passing left many saddened but not forgotten. She did not leave in silence, but as someone who chose to stand for the truth to the very end. Her legacy lies not only in her legendary role, but also in the courage that taught the world to listen more humanely. Javier Muñoz, not just an actor, but someone who emerged from his own shadows to stand in the brightest lights of Broadway. He became widely known for his portrayal of Alexander Hamilton in the iconic musical Hamilton, replacing Lin-Manuel Miranda. But behind that legendary role lies not only talent, but also a quiet yet resilient journey. In 2002, Javier was diagnosed with HIV. For years, he chose to keep it a secret, quietly facing the physical and mental challenges in the ever-harsh entertainment industry. He continued to work, perform on stage, but no one knew that behind the lights was a relentless battle. Then, in 2016, having become one of the prominent faces of Hamilton, Javier made a decision that changed everything. He publicly revealed his condition. No longer a closely guarded secret, he emerged as himself an artist, a person living with HIV who continues to shine. This frankness not only shattered old prejudices, but also opened up a new space for understanding and empathy. Javier didn't turn his story into a tragedy, but into an inspiration of inner strength and resilience. He proved that HIV doesn't define a person's worth, and that the stage isn't just for the perfect, but for those who dare to live authentically. Javier Muñoz continues to stand there strong, sincere, and full of life. And perhaps the moments that touch the audience's hearts most deeply don't come from perfection, but from the courage of someone who dares to be themselves in the eyes of the world. Brad Davis, a once dazzling star, a soul constantly torn between the spotlight and the hidden depths of his inner self. He made a powerful impact with Midnight Express, winning a Golden Globe and etching his name into cinema with his melancholic gaze and profound acting. But behind that success lies a quiet journey filled with challenges that few see. In the late 1980s, Brad Davis was diagnosed with HIV at a time when the disease was still shrouded in fear, stigma, and ostracism. Even so, he didn't disappear from the arts. He continued his work, stepping onto the stage and screen with all his remaining strength, as if each role was a way to keep himself standing against the harsh changes of life. As his health gradually declined and the art world narrowed, he maintained a rare honesty. Brad Davis spoke out about the silence and prejudice many in his situation faced, leaving behind poignant thoughts about how society perceives people beyond the spotlight. Brad Davis died in 1991 at the age of 41. following complications related to AIDS. His passing not only brought to an end a memorable career, but also left a lasting legacy of courage, truth, and dignity in the most difficult moments of life. John Holmes, a name once considered an icon of the adult film industry. A man who lived on the fine line between fame, notoriety, and public curiosity. He lived a frenetic life, leaving behind a life full of controversy, but one that cannot be erased from memory. However, behind that glamour lay a harsh truth few knew. In 1986, John Holmes was diagnosed with HIV at a time when the disease still caused widespread fear and stigma. In that situation, he chose to remain silent, without going public or warning those around him. That silence gradually became a controversial part of his life story. When the information began to spread, it was too late to change. His former fame was quickly overshadowed by disappointment and endless debate. The industry once associated with him gradually turned its back on him, leaving a man who once stood at the pinnacle of success, now quietly facing illness and loneliness. John Holmes died in 1988 at the age of 43 from complications related to AIDS. His death not only brought to an end a life full of turmoil, but also became a poignant reminder of the consequences of silence in a time when the truth should have been spoken sooner. John Curry is an Olympic figure skating champion who ushered the sport into a new era by combining athletic technique with the delicate beauty of ballet. He not only created highly artistic performances, but also broke down rigid stereotypes of masculinity in elite sports. With his emotionally rich and aesthetically pleasing performance style, John changed the way the world viewed figure skating. Behind the glamour on the ice lies a much quieter life. John is gay, living in an era where differences were often hidden. In 1987, he received an HIV diagnosis, a piece of information that presented him with challenges not only to his health, but also to his mental health and social prejudice. Instead of choosing complete silence, John Curry gradually stepped forward and confronted the truth about himself. In 1991, he publicly revealed his health condition, not as a surrender, but as an affirmation of his right to live authentically, without letting illness or prejudice define his worth. John Curry passed away on April 15, 1994, due to complications related to AIDS. At the age of 44, his passing left a deep sense of loss in the world of sports and performing arts. However, his legacy remains invaluable, a pioneering spirit in figure skating, elegance in every movement, and most importantly, the courage to live true to himself. These qualities have made John Curry a lasting source of inspiration for generations to come. Klaus Nomi was a rare artistic phenomenon, a voice and image seemingly from another world, where the boundaries between reality and fantasy were almost blurred. With a voice blending classical opera and avant-garde performance styles, coupled with dehumanizing body movements and surreal costumes, he created an unmistakable mark on the New York stage in the late 1970s. Klaus didn't simply perform. He created an artistic space where the bizarre became the language and difference was central. However, behind that iconic image was a vulnerable man, living in an era unprepared to understand the diseases and marginalized lives of the people. In 1982, Klaus was diagnosed with HIV, at a time when medicine and society still had significant gaps in their understanding of the disease. Without effective treatment or adequate support, he faced everything in solitude, with music as his only means of survival. In his final performances, audiences still saw a distinct Klaus Nomi on stage. But behind that extraordinary voice lay the gradual decline of his body and the shadow of an impending end. On August 6, 1983, he passed away at the age of 39, leaving a huge void in the contemporary art world. Despite his short life, Klaus Nomi left an irreplaceable legacy. He was not only a pioneering artist of experimental performance, but also an icon of absolute difference in art. His existence serves as a reminder that art can transcend all boundaries. But the price of difference is sometimes incredibly harsh in a world not yet ready to accept it. Jean Anthony Ray is one of those rare stars who rose from obscurity and left a lasting legacy that outshone his career. He danced as if his body were born for music, each movement carrying the energy of the streets, of instinct, and of a talent that needed no formal training. His role as Leroy Johnson in Fame 1980 propelled him to global fame. But what was special was that he didn't just play the role, he was the living embodiment of the character on screen. However, the rapid rise to fame sometimes doesn't come with the stability to sustain it. Gene faced many upheavals in his personal life, including issues related to addiction and a sense of disorientation after his fame faded. The world that once celebrated him on stage couldn't offer him support when the lights went out, making his journey behind the scenes incredibly precarious. By the 1990s, his appearances in the entertainment industry had become less frequent, and his private life increasingly secluded. In 1995, Jean Anthony Ray was diagnosed with HIV, at a time when the disease still carried significant social stigma and fear. He spent the following period quietly, no longer appearing in public as before, and never making the return to the stage that many had hoped for. On November 14, 2003, Gene passed away at the age of 41 due to complications related to his illness and a stroke. His death was unannounced. But for those who had witnessed him on screen, it marked the end of a unique energy. Jean Anthony Ray was not just a dancer or an actor, but also an icon of a dream that once burned brightly before quietly fading away, leaving behind the legacy of a talent difficult to replicate. Magic Johnson, a moment that froze the entire sports world. On November 7, 1991, at a historic press conference, Earvin Magic Johnson, the legend of the Los Angeles Lakers, NBA champion and icon of joy on the court, stepped before a multitude of cameras. The lights shone on his face, calm but heavy, and then he said what no one was prepared to hear. He had contracted HIV and would be leaving the NBA. Just a few short words, but enough to shake the entire sports world. A man who once represented strength, confidence, and victory now faced a disease that at the time was still shrouded in fear and prejudice. But Magic didn't choose to disappear. He chose to confront it. He didn't evade, he didn't remain silent. He publicly shared his story and embarked on a new journey, where the battle was no longer fought on the basketball court, but in the consciousness of society as a whole. He proactively sought treatment, maintained his spirits, and continued to appear in public with optimism, transforming adversity into a new source of motivation. From this, the Magic Johnson Foundation was established, focusing on raising awareness about HIV, supporting testing, and educating the community, especially vulnerable groups. What was once a personal shock gradually became a larger, deeply social mission. Years later, Magic is remembered not only as a basketball legend, but also as one of the most influential figures in changing how the world views HIV. He proved that life doesn't end with a diagnosis, but can open up a different path if people are brave enough to confront and act. The moment in 1991 was not just a retirement announcement, but a turning point in global awareness. Magic Johnson helped break the silence, transforming an avoided topic into something worth discussing, understanding, and acting upon. And from there, his story transcended sport, becoming part of a history of social change. Anthony Hamilton was a talented actor who was expected to go very far in Hollywood. He wasn't just a narrator. He was the kind of actor who could convey emotion through his gaze, his silence, and deliberate pauses. His presence on screen felt natural yet captivating, enough to inspire confidence in directors and draw audiences into each scene. Throughout the 1980s and early 1990s, he gradually established himself through many promising roles, opening up a seemingly promising career path. But just as things were flourishing, his life took a harsh turn. Anthony Hamilton was diagnosed with HIV at a time when society still held many prejudices, misunderstandings, and fears surrounding the disease. His health began to decline, and with it, his career opportunities gradually narrowed. Invitations to act dwindled, projects ceased, and the spotlight that once surrounded him quietly faded. He withdrew from the film industry, living a more private life amidst a period of upheaval and pressure. On March 29, 1995, Anthony Hamilton died of AIDS-related pneumonia at the age of 42. His family chose transparency regarding the cause of death, while also calling for support for community support organizations, transforming their loss into a meaningful social action. Although he did not leave behind a career that lasted to its peak, like many of his contemporaries, Anthony Hamilton is remembered as a promising talent whose life was cut short too soon. His story serves as a reminder of the fragility of life, of talents that are not fully realized, and of the value of compassion in how people face illness and loss. Afra Heza was a voice with rare cultural depth, an artist who blended traditional Yemeni music with the spirit of modern pop, creating a style that was both relatable and internationally iconic. She was considered by many to be the Madonna of the East, not only for her fame, but also for her ability to transform ancient melodies into emotionally resonant contemporary music. With her clear and expressive voice, Afra touched audiences worldwide, becoming a source of pride for Israeli music and a bridge between past heritage and the modern stage. In 2000, her sudden death shocked the public. Initially, official reports stated the cause was pneumonia. But over time, other details emerged, suggesting she may have lived with HIV in silence. Believed to be related to her personal life and private choices, she did not disclose, in a society still rife with prejudice. Afra seems to have chosen to keep her story private, perhaps to protect her family, reputation, or simply personal peace. While the cause of her death varies, public reaction has largely been one of grief rather than judgment. Fans remember her as a talented artist rather than a tragic story, because Afra Heza's music transcended all speculation. On February 23, 2000, she passed away at the age of 42, leaving a huge void in the world of music. But her legacy doesn't end there. Songs like I Am Nin Alu and her contributions to the Prince of Egypt continue to live on, continue to be heard, and continue to spread. Afra Heza needs no explanation to be remembered. Her voice itself has become the story. A timeless, gentle, yet enduring imprint on humanity's memory. Thank you for watching until the end of the video. If you found today's content interesting and valuable, please help me by liking, subscribing to the channel, and turning on notifications so you don't miss the next videos. Every interaction from you, whether it's a like, a comment, or a share, is a huge motivation for me to continue creating and bringing you more engaging stories. See you in the next videos.